Brant DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brant. Visit your local Brant dealer for more information.
There's been a process that's been going on for a number of years. At least it feels that way to me, and that is seed regulatory modernization. And here to talk about the pre-consultation report that's been put out by CFIA, it is the executive director with the Canadian Seekers Association, Doug Miller. Doug, how are we doing?
Doing great, Shaun. Glad to talk to you about my favorite subject, seed regulatory modernization. Uh,
Really? This is
yeah,
your favorite?
like like all good things, Shaun. Eventually, the CFI's pre-consultations on seed regulatory modernization will come to an end. This has been a process where we're taking a step back and reimagining what Canada's seed sector needs to look like.
Hmm.
This is a process that CSGA has been heavily engaged in for the last 4.5, 5 years, and we have a really strong vision of what success looks like through this process. So happy to talk with you about that.
Okay, there's it's like a 35-page document, so we can't go through it all.
Yep.
Let's start off with based on what CFIA has put in the report, and this is it's pre-consultation, but there has
Yep.
been meetings in your group, meeting at Seeds Canada, meeting like if there's an organization or stakeholders connected to the seed industry in Canada, they have talked about this issue. Although it may not be on the forefront for a lot of farmers, but
Yep.
based on what is in this future proofing Canada seeds regulations for a stronger tomorrow document, what are you the most excited about?
Yeah. Well, CFI has referred to this process as being robust. And let me tell you, Shaun, it has been robust. It's involved hundreds plus stakeholders coming together through task teams, pre-consultation surveys to be able to get to this point. Whenever CSGA looks at what the CFI is proposing, we see a lot of good things in here. When we look at what success looks like, it's a modern seed system that is responsive to change, that is sector-led and government-enabled. CFI through this is putting in key foundational pieces. I'm going to use the term legislative instruments, which are
Okay.
going to make all your listeners kind of go fuzzy-eyed. But basically, what they're doing is putting a lot of sections called incorporation by reference into the seeds regulations. What this is kind of a piece and a mechanism that allows CFIA to be able to reference documents that exist outside of regulations. Why is this important? Because it allows us to speed up future changes. So a lot of this process is about setting us up for future success. So CFI is proposing to use this process across many different parts of the seed regulations so that whenever we're ready for future change, we're able to move on it quite quickly. So an example of this would be crop kind subject to variety registration. If a crop kind wanted to move within that process right now, they would have to go through a whole regulatory change. Now, in the future, this could be done through incorporation by reference, a more agile process to get the job done. Another example would be, the use of drones in crop inspections. That technology isn't there today, but in the future it could be. And then we could use this process to be able to fast track its adoption. So this is one area that we're really excited about. The other area would be CSGA taking on more administrative tasks from the government. And this has kind of been our main push to the process about CSGA becoming the main administrator of Canada's seed certification system. This is a model that we see internationally in mature seed systems where government delegates authority for the day-to-day work of seed systems to an entity like CSGA. We've been around for over 120 years. We are a co-regulator in the space, and there's a lot of key points in here that we're going to be able to take on more work. Our seed sector right now really leverages alternative service delivery, which is another government buzzword, but it's just essentially the outsourcing of key work under strict parameters.
What
So
kind
we've
of
already,
work, Doug? What kind of work?
yeah, so an example of this would be what we currently do right now is like crop inspection. But examples that CFI is proposing in here is for like an organization like CSG to take over the administration of the OECD Seed Schemes Export Certification Program. And so this is one, again, where it seems like an extension of our existing work, and one where we're very tapped into the OECD. The OECD is launching a new digital seed hub, hopefully this year. And CSGA was actually part of the establishment and the strategy development for their seed hub. So there's a lot of great work that CSGA has been working on behind the scenes for the last number of years that is really kind of starting to take light in this proposal.
What's in this document that you take issue with when you provide your feedback? You're going to be like, oh, wait a second here.
Yeah.
What about this?
Yeah, so I'd say, there's 2 to 3 main different buckets for us where we have some concerns. And so I'd say that at a high level, we support about 40 of the 52 recommendations. It's all about streamlining, in our case, common sense adjustments. Where we have problems with the proposal is that it seems in some areas that CFI is taking on additional responsibilities, more enforcement. How do we reconcile that with, the current conversations coming out of government about doing more with less, potential cuts? Could this create more bottlenecks for our sector? Could this create, slower processing times of key things like variety registration applications? Again, that concerns us. I think there's an opportunity to leverage an organization like CSJ more to outsource more of that work to us. The other part would be, CFI over-regulating in certain areas. And this is more about, whenever they're putting forward policy positions, are they using regulations or, in some cases, could this be done through policy or operational guidance documents? So there's a few issues that we have where they're proposing regulatory change where we think it would be more agile and more responsive to use a policy update.
Now, some would argue, Doug, that you mentioned the bottleneck and concerns over, the resources over it, in the government department CFIA,
Yeah.
based on some of the, there's some austerity coming for sure. But some would say that we're just moving the bottleneck. We're moving the bottleneck from CFIA and we're going to move it. And we're going to park it over at CSGA. Nothing really changes. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I would say that we're not interested in just taking over the processes as they exist. We have a lot of experience with digitization, and our main part of our thing is being able to digitize the whole seed system. In our past work in this space with the launch of our CSJ SeedCert platform, which is the main platform used by the whole seed sector to do crop inspection and how CFI oversees that, we are able to see a 1,700% increase in terms of efficiencies, in terms of being able to get certification decisions into the hands of farmers more quickly. We're planning on taking that same kind of approach, that digital first mindset, and applying it to the rest of the seed certification system, hopefully to be able to find more efficiencies. So we have a lot of interesting proposals coming forward, like our digital single window, variety profile platform. These could have big savings for the seed sector, but then also those that rely on seed as well.
Do you feel as written that this attracts more competition to the Canadian space in some of the crop types? Like, does this make Canada an easier place to do business?
Yeah, I think you have to look at this as part of a bigger conversation. Like, when you look at the consultations that are ongoing now with PBR, looking at streamlining seed regulations, they're all part of the equation to be able to track more investments. I think we're in the right track. Obviously, we could always do more. But I think things like variety registration being a very flexible process right now do allow for that continual improvement, that if we do see irritants or we have issues, the value chain is able to address those very quickly. So I'd say that, we're all these changes combined, we're all kind of moving in the right direction.
Now, for some of the people in our audience, they're in the they're seed growers, they're with seed companies, they're in this space. But for the farmer that is getting into harvest here, and they're not necessarily living in the seed industry on a day-to-day basis, why is this SRM consultation process and this document as it stands today, why is this so critical for
Yeah.
for them?
Yeah, for them. Well, I would say that 9 out of 10 bites of food that we consume daily start with seed. So seed is the starting point of so many of the value chains that your listeners are part of. Whether it's the ones that have direct line of sights, like the barley that goes into the beer, it's the forages that feed the cattle. Seed plays a vital role, and it's about making sure that we have a seed system that's able to keep up with the pace of innovation that's happening in our sector, but is still able to provide, trust and confidence in that seed. And so as our members kind of are going through harvest right now, and your listeners, you know, they're taking the crop off. And as they're making next year's decisions, there's a lot of opportunities to think about seed. But at the same time, right now, we're asking you to think about, what does the system look like? What does it need to have that brings that seed to your farm?
I was even I think I even gave a presentation at one point to what a meeting of in this whole consultation process that feels like it was ages ago. At that time, I remember a push for like, this is an opportunity. This is like there's a window here. The government's saying, what do you want to do? Right. And so it
Yep.
got to think big. Do you think CFIA has thought big enough in this document?
Well, I'd say that right now SRM is coming at a really interesting time because we've just spent 4.5 years, 5 years talking about all the pain points. So when I think about like the government's red tape reduction plan or the pre-budget consultations, like this is the most excitement I've seen about a budget in years. We have a plan of easy wins, low-hanging fruit that the government can implement now to be able to improve the lives of farmers today. So again, what we're seeing through this is that yes, there is some regulatory changes, and those should probably go through the existing process, but there's policy changes, there's guidance changes, there's expanding of relationships with organizations like CSGA. Those are all things that we think can be fast-tracked, especially now with the context that we're operating, to be able to, again, we should like something as simple as being able to um, just be more effective. Like, do we need to wait 2 years if there's already broad agreement that this is the right direction? No, we should be able to get this going. So I'll be in Ottawa later this week, talking to the Secretary of State about CSJ's pre-budget submission, where we talk about, there's wins in here in the SRM process for the seed sector today. Let's capitalize on these. Let's move on them, and let's not wait to go through the whole process.
We've been talking to Doug Miller. He's executive director with the CSGA. Doug, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, Shaun.